Good evening and welcome to Hot Topics from the Soul. I'm your host, Dr. Valerie Parker Hagan, and I have my co host with me.
Well, good evening and welcome back to everyone that has been gone, and especially on this day here in this beautiful month of May. And May is always the time of flowers. We should say April showers bring May flowers. So I hope everybody's blooming right about now.
Yeah, and to all my mothers, happy belated Mother's Day. I celebrate you, my queens. You know, a mother isn't just someone that gave birth to a child. They're mothers that have taken children in as their own and have loved on them and helped nurture them to take them to the next level of life, which has caused them to be great, wonderful beings. So I salute you, my queens.
I concur with you, Dr. Val. One of the things I said on Mother's Day was that we had to include all mothers, not just mothers who was biological mothers, meaning that they carried a baby in the womb, but those mothers who were instructional mothers, those mothers who was bonus mothers, those mothers who was the guiding hand mothers. And so, I don't call them step mothers, I call them step up mothers, because you
Mm,
have to step up in order to make a difference. And so, if the truth be told, every day could be Mother's Day, but we definitely
yes.
want to take that time to celebrate the beautiful mothers, their sacrifice, the undaunting task of being charged with so much to do. And I think we men are finally getting it in this day and time that there is no comparison when we start talking about the job of a mother, the sacrifice of a mother. Literally, I mean, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world.
Mm, yes, indeed. And you know, this is also Mental Health Awareness Month as well.
Yeah, the month of May carries a lot of things, but one of the most important one is Mental Health Awareness Month. And the color for that is generally green, and I don't have on green today. I was wearing it all last week, and I had some leftovers from St. Patrick's Day. But green is the color for mental health. And when we
Okay.
think of green, we think of life, right? When we think of green, we talk about something being alive. And it is so good, Dr. Val, that our nation is finally coming to a place where we can highlight things like mental health awareness, where we go all out of our way to make sure that we raise the level of awareness amongst us all about mental health. And that's what this is all about, even tonight, is to raise awareness, to shine a light on mental health and the importance of it. And hopefully our goal could be that we can rid the shame and the stigmatism and raise the knowledge, and so that we can be better suited and better educated to be able to deal with the issue of mental health.
Yeah, one of the greatest myths is that individuals feel that if they go and seek help from a psychiatrist or, counselor, that they are crazy. They feel that if they go to a place like a mental health institution, that it means that they'll be deemed for the rest of their life as crazy. And then they don't want their friends talking about, she was in this cray cray in New York. They had Creedmoor Hospital. So anytime somebody acted up, say they go into Creedmoor, they go into Creedmoor. And, I think that a lot of people have adapted that into their mindset that once they get labeled that they will never be able to recover, so they'll just go with the punches or just succumb to their inner fears and wind up, sometimes taking their lives, which is unfortunate. And it is not just because you're black, white, brown skin. It does not affect you because of your economical status. No one is obsolete or no one can escape mental illness.
And that's part of the message. That is part of the message that has to be reiterated, because there is no discrimination when it comes to mental illness. It is no discrimination. Now, you might have some groups that are more susceptible to things because there are so many other factors that are there, but none of us are exempt. A couple of weeks ago, the music industry lost a very prominent member of the country music industry, Naomi Judd. And I don't care what color you were, if you were a fan of music at all, you remember the Judds, and you didn't even have to
Yeah.
like country music, but they were so sensational. But in Naomi's latter part of her life, she suffered from mental illness, and she began to talk openly about the mental illnesses that she suffered, and she dealt with everything from clinical depression and other things. And I think that's where, when we raise the awareness, we have to raise the awareness from a standpoint of understanding. Don't run away from the knowledge of mental health because you're so afraid of mental illnesses and mental disorders. So when you saw people, you heard people talk about hospitals like Creedmoor and talk about these places, they generally was focusing on people who was dealing with extreme mental illnesses, disorders, whether it was psychosis and other things. And what we fail to recognize oftentimes, when we get treated or when we get what we need early on, it could really help if you would steer the ship a different way. And so often tell people, don't allow your fear of finding out that you may need some help or need some things in an area. Don't let it stop you from getting what you need, because ultimately mental health is just that. It's being in a state of mental health, absent of mental illnesses, just like us physically, when we're not feeling well and we start having things go wrong with us, reason we go to the doctor and things because we want to get well. No one thinks anything of you if you say, look, I need to go to the doctor because I'm having chest pain. No one thinks ill of you because of the fact I need to go to the doctor because, my leg is hurt. Matter of fact, we say, yeah, you better go get that checked out. But there tends to be a different perspective and a different perception when you start saying, man, I think I need to go get some help. I'm feeling depressed, or I just keep feeling like, I feel so much anxiety. Well, get help. Help is important, and help comes in many different ways. All help is not necessarily medication. It's not necessarily, that you have to be on a psychotropic drugs. I know that exists, but some help comes in the form of counseling. Some
Right.
come in the form of, other things. People may not believe it. Different forms of meditation, different forms of things that we have to do to distress our bodies and distress our mind. So part of that awareness is getting people to recognize, don't hide in shame or stigmatize, get help. Don't suffer in silence, because oftentimes when people are afraid to deal with mental health or mental illnesses because of the fact of that stigma, they suffer in silence. And oftentimes they are suffering in silence, but even silence have a scream. And when that happens, oftentimes it's too late. We see self-destruction. We see things that happen where they harm themselves. And that is the reason, if no other reason, that we have to raise our awareness, find out where we get help at, understanding there are support groups. There's so many different forms of things that can help us walk through mental health and mental illnesses. And that's part of what we're going to talk about tonight with our special guest that's with us on tonight.
Okay. Yes, we're going to bring forth Pamela Frasier, and she's going to communicate with us about an event she's having this month. And also, Pamela, could you welcome to the show Hot Topics from the Soul?
Thank you
Thank you
so
for
very
taking
much.
time out of your schedule to join us. Okay, one of the questions that I know everybody wants to know is, what is mental health?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that, but what is it not? It's a combination of your emotional, your psychological, even your social well-being.
Mhm.
It's your ability to determine things like your cognition, your perception, and your behavior, and it determines, a lot of times, like how you handle stress. And quite frankly, I lose it a lot. I tell my family, "Yeah, I done lost it. Just leave it." um, but mental health, it includes subjective things, but it also is things like how you perceive, the self-efficacy, your autonomy, those kind of things is mental health. And it's just a shame because had a I had a presentation during one of my sessions from someone who did it on stigmas. What are stigmas? Well, stigmas are like when your grandmother says, like, you can't, um, you can't walk around with makeup on because that's going to attract some man and you're going to come home pregnant and we'll have to beat you to death. So, it's things, it's a learned behavior that you
Mhm.
get in mental health. So, these stigmas do come around.
That's a very, very, very good way of defining that, because when we look at the fact of so many things, when we start talking about mental health, we talk about mental well-being, our ability to deal with normal stressors of life. That's mental health. How do I stay healthy? I stay healthy because of the fact of my ability to realize my coping strategies. Am I able to deal with certain things? And so when we talk about mental health is a state of being, to be able to, as you
Correct.
say, to
Correct.
identify, to be able to cope with things, to be able to navigate through life. And so for folks who might think the stigmatism of mental health, they need help, I like for them to always realize that we all need help at one point or another. A person who experienced a traumatic event in their lives, emotionally, they're shaken. And for that moment, whether that moment is an hour or whether that moment is days, months, weeks, whatever length of time, for that period of time, they are in need of mental help. They need help. They need strategies. They need to be able to get to a place where they can cope and deal with the reality that is there and the impact of what's happening. And so nothing about that is shameful. As a matter of fact, those type of things normally will draw a sense of empathy from people. The fact that, wow, that's got to be very terrible what they just went through. They just had back-to-back deaths, or they just had, a fire that happened, and someone just lost a baby right behind it. Those are emotional and mental uh, stressors that happens in people's life, and they can be
All
quite
the time.
traumatic. And so when we look at it from that standpoint, isn't it interesting? Then we don't necessarily equate it with the being crazy or being, something's wrong with them. But what we have to understand is that things happen to people. Things happen to us. We react differently to certain things. Our ability to cope. The main thing I think that when we talk about mental health is raising awareness that we need to recognize when we're not at our best, when we're not healthy, when we do need help and need to be connected to the right resources. And that is one of the goals it is of the Mental Health Coalition, in which you are the director of. Tell us a little bit about the Mental Health Coalition, West Palm Beach Mental Health Coalition, and how it came about.
Wow, that's a good story. It came out about back in about 2009. I was not working, but volunteering with an organization called Boca Raton's Promise, with a woman named Rita Thrasher. And what she was
Yes.
doing, she was trying to bring an awareness to people of mental health and versus mental illness, by going from city to city in Palm Beach County. Now, mind you, I know we have 39 cities in Palm Beach County. We didn't do that
Yes.
many, but from Boca to Lake Worth to Delray, um, uh, and then West Palm Beach. I started the West Palm Beach Coalition, and it was a matter of starting conversations, getting into conversations with people, getting them to talk with you. And it's just like what mental health first aid is about now. And
Mhm.
what I looked at, it's you start a conversation. You're not doing it to provide a cure or to put a band-aid on something, that where it's hurting, but it's for you to know that someone is experiencing a manner of stress. And it's interesting, you talked about death, but that's how we got involved with working with pastors, because I think pastors internalize too much. And during the pandemic, with pastors, and I won't say just pastors, but clergy in general, with the rate of suicide, they were internalizing things that they should not have been. But what we were doing well, during that time, was trying to bring mental health resources to various clergy so that they know who to reach out to, and then try to enhance their bereavement counseling to a much more finer form of pastoral counseling. But the mental health, back when the Mental Health Coalition, and I apologize for jumping like that. But what we do, is we bring awareness to the community. Our mission is to start conversations and bring education and resources to the underserved communities. And we don't do this on just Facebook or online. We do it in person. We were doing it in person. We tend to start that up again, and we bring persons into the and bring presentations for our members who would show up. That was the coalition, but what I'm working on now is the Family Mental Health and Wellness Festival. And I call it a festival for simple reasons. It's for the individuals to meet with persons in the mental health field who might be able to work with them to help them in a friendly atmosphere where they can, right? We're in a friendly atmosphere where, there'll be music and food and friendly faces, so that people feel less ashamed of trying to seek out the help that they can. Now, the individuals who will be at our festival know that they're not to start do any counseling or anything of that nature on the spot. But what they do is, if you find someone needs help, see if you can make an appointment and then meet with them at a later point. But that's all it is bringing them together to talk about mental health.
And this is not your first year doing this. You've been doing this for a few years, and I have to say that I think I've been a part of almost all of them, and they have been very informative. They have been very relatable. They have been filled with resources and people making connections, and in commonality. Commonality is a very great cure-all for people. One of the things that happen with people is when they feel isolated, when they feel by themselves, when they feel like it's me against the world, when they feel as if they don't fit in, when they feel like they are so different that no one else deals with what they're dealing with. And when you can show commonality that people are dealing with it, people have dealt with it, people have come through things, it makes it a lot more, if you would, culpable. You can deal with it. You understand that you're not by yourself, and that somehow or another you're not this strange individual, but you're a person that's dealing with life situations and life circumstances that happen, and we need help in getting through that. So this family mental health and wellness festival is Saturday, May 21st.
May 21st. Yes, indeed.
And it starts at what time?
It's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Frankly, it's going to be a lot of different things going on. I feel very good about what's going on. We will have a plenary session where we'll have, our elected officials will come and show their support for mental health and mental wellness in this Northwest community, which is an underserved community of West Palm Beach. Okay. We have several different things that are going on. One, I got to talking about the clergy and so forth, but that's one of our biggest activities that we will have this year. We will have a roundtable of clergy, maybe 4 or 5 gentlemen and ladies who will talk about their relationship to mental health resources and what they can do to try to work with their congregations in solving or making them feel more at ease and coming to them to talk. We will have presentations, say, for example, on a trauma such as domestic abuse. And we will have another presentation on trafficking immediately, following that one. And those presentations are being done because those are issues that occur right there pretty much in the underserved community. People need to understand what's going on and how they can get help to get around it. We have, it's a festival, okay? It's a fun time. We will have young people, one young man who's the winner of one winner of an oratorical session with the Martin Luther King Coordinating Committee. And he will do an oratorical piece that he wrote himself on self and what he realizes he is about and how he can achieve. And I love it because he's only 14 or 15 years of age, and he relates to other young people. We will
Absolutely.
have intermittently also a young woman who is a violinist from the Bach School of the Performing Arts. And during that session, not during that session, but intermixed during the day, she will play that violin. And then we have another woman who will be doing, a young woman who will be doing a praise dance. Um, the music for the event is being given by a group called Digital Vibes, and that's a group of young people, and they will be playing musical scenarios while during the whole event, from the auditorium through to the exhibition hall. And exhibition hall is really my fancy name for saying the gym, but we're bringing it together. Everything is going to look good. But we have things going on throughout. We're asking that people, when they come to the event, that they put on masks. If you don't want to wear it when you're there, um, I don't think they're going to knock it, but we're going to make sure everyone's temperature is taken, and we're going to ask you to wear your mask up front, because I think with that many people, we're expecting about 200 to 300 people walking around and meeting with folks and talking. I think it's only uh, polite, okay? And that's something I learned. That's a stigma I have, knowing what to say. But I think people need to understand what others might want. But it'll be at the Salvation Army that day. Yeah.
I applaud the way that you've put the program together because a lot of people would not ordinarily come. So with you have it being a festive
Festival.
time, I have a cold, excuse me, and um, having some entertainment, and that way it won't be so focused on the problems at hand, which is mental health, domestic violence. You know,
Correct.
so much is going on in the world right now. You know, the stocks are plummeting, the coin currency is plummeting, everything is like going downhill, and people are stressed out. There's jobs, but not people qualified for the jobs. There's, the war brewing. Everyone's afraid of what the next step is going to be. So everybody's in a state of panic, and they're liable to snap at any moment because of circumstances around them. So I applaud the event that you're putting together. That will be a little distraction, but also be able to allow people to get help they need. Because, like Dr. J said, mental health means sometimes you need to be able to communicate with someone that what's really going on in the inside, someone to understand how you feel and what you're thinking. And one of the things that the enemy within does is make you feel like you're the only one. Nobody's going through this but you. And because you're the only one going through, just forget about it. You'll never be anything. You're just a loser because you're always worried about things. But these are real issues that people carry every day, and they become weights on them. So if they're able to have someone to communicate how they're feeling, it will cause a paradigm shift in their thinking so that they can embrace a larger vision of themselves to seek greater instead of less.
I agree. I agree. This isn't the first festival. I think I was going to say that. I started in 2017, having this.
Try and
The
stay in the
first.
frame.
Pardon me.
Try and stay in the frame.
Oh, okay. 2017, and this is actually our fourth annual festival. But we had one scheduled for 2020, but that was canceled due to COVID. And 2021 didn't look much better. So this is the first one we've had since 2019. And
Mm.
frankly, I'm really elated the way people, when I talk with them and tell them about what we've done, what we want to do, how there is kind of catching on. And people are feeling it. Plus the fact that mental health is such a hot topic, people want to be more involved and get to learn more. And I would be remiss at saying that I'm pulling this together, but the actual presentation or at the event, aside from the members of the West Palm Beach Mental Health Coalition, thank you. We also have we also have the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, who will be managing our exhibition area. We have the Eta Phi Beta sorority, which will be handling our registration and people coming in the front door, taking, they'll greet you, they'll put a name tag on you with a smile and direct you to the right or to left, determine where you want to go first. So, and I'm really happy about that. And then we have, of course, the music coming from the group called Digital Vibes. So a lot of things are really, they're really coming together. And as we pick up speed, as I was indicating, we have the harvest, the persons who are providing food from the harvest are also part of this national coalition of Jewish women, and they've taken a big part in wanting to be a part of this. So, it's I just like the coming together of everyone trying to work to or in support of this issue that has no color barrier. It's affecting everyone, and it's up to everyone to there's a phrase that I learned when I was young, and each one teach one, each one support one, or something like that.
Each one reach one. Mm-hmm.
Each one reach one. But it's all a part. We have to do it together. We can't just talk about it. And I've been, as I indicated earlier, I'm not a mental health. My background is not in health or mental health or anything. It's I retired from Palm Beach County small business back in 2017 after 25 years of being here in Florida. So it's something that really interests. It's within me. I feel it's something that everyone needs to understand and needs to know where to go to get the help. And if I can bring together these organizations in one place, then so be it. I'll do that. And I see that it's working out well.
Well, one of the things that you said that is so important is that when we raise this awareness, that people understand that it's right next door to us. It is said, and this is one of the statistics that I often like talking about here, that we have to understand that mental disorders are common here in the United States of America. 1 in 5 adults are having a mental disorder at least one time in the year. So there's a mental disorder that is happening around us. And so rather than run from it, we need to run to it as far as understanding how can we help one another, because families oftentimes can have breakdowns because of the fact they don't understand what's happening with one another. It says a national survey of Americans found that 18.5% of adults are dealing with mental disorders and experiencing mental illnesses in any 1 year. And this is equivalent, watch this, to 43.8 million people. Do we really feel alone by ourselves now? Well, we understand that 43.8 million people are dealing with some type of mental disorder.
Correct.
And so when we look at it from that type of view, then we understand that it behooves us to be empowered, to get the knowledge that we need, to make connection to the resources. And one of the things that really blesses me about you, Pam, is that, as you just said, well, you're doing this not because your background is a therapist or a psychologist or a counselor. You're doing this because of the fact there's a place in you that pulls when you understand that people are dealing with mental disorders. People are dealing with things that change their lives. And sometimes there's an event. There could be an event. There could be something traumatic that happened. It could be the culmination, if you would, of what we call ACEs, adverse childhood experiences that people are dealing with. And so when we look at it from that aspect, it really should encourage us all to become educated, to learn as much as we can. How can we support one another? How can we spot that someone around us is going through some type of mental health episode? And I'm quite sure you can attest to the fact of one of the things that have happened very big here in Palm Beach County over the last few years, notwithstanding COVID, It's the fact of the county's effort to make sure that we're blanketed with information such as mental health first aid. Uh,
Correct.
you know, being able to attend those type of trainings, being able to go through those type of things that makes us more efficiently when we are dealing with everyday people. Not that we're there to diagnose them, but we're there to be aware, to be able to assess, so that we can be there at the proper time when someone needs us.
Correct. And I was hoping that at some point I would try to become a mental health first aid instructor as well, because I think we need more persons who look like yourself and I, who are in the neighborhoods and sharing that business of what did you call it? The when you do that a piece with the mental health first aid, needs to be more of us in the community
Yeah,
doing that and getting people involved. So and making that awareness known. And as long as I'm able to do it, most certainly I will. I enjoy what I do because I get satisfaction and peace knowing that someone can smile and just say thanks or thank you, even if they don't say thank you, and just the nod that you know that they appreciate what you've done. So yeah.
absolutely. And one of the things that you said with the mental health first aid that is being offered here in Palm Beach County, it is great. I am a mental health first aid instructor. I need to do more instructing. As COVID slowed us down a lot, but in the midst of COVID, we actually went back to get certified as a mental health first aid instructor for youth and young adults as well, because it's important. But I come back to you, particularly you have a heart for seeing the faith community be a part of this, because you do see significance. You do see where they play a very vital role inside of being able to be a resource, or definitely have proper information for people that need to be able to guide that way. Why does that stand out to you? Why is it that stands out with you? And that's the first part of the question. The second part, would you encourage even clergy and faith members to take the mental health first aid?
Most
Instructor.
certainly, and I think when I was indicating that earlier in our conversation, that one of the reasons why I started doing the roundtables or I had my first roundtable at Palm Beach State College on the clergy and mental health is because of the high suicide rate. And perhaps I wasn't being clear, but because they were, committing suicide, which they shouldn't have been, but they were internalizing. Many of these internalize a lot more than what they're capable of doing. Okay, and they forget that deal with self first. But I got involved with that because the clergy is the one place where many of the I won't say constituents, but many persons go to when they're having an issue, and we wanted to enhance the clergy, and I'm talking about any faith. I mean, we've dealt with different things, whether you're Jewish or whether you're uh,
Muslim or whatever.
Muslim with the imams or pastor, Presbyterian. I don't care. It has to be some relationship where people feel comfortable going to the clergy, and conversely, that member of the clergy being able to provide them to refer them to someone who can help them. Our initial thought was to get the pastors or the clergy involved in taking a class in mental health first aid, then getting the different therapists and so forth that come and meet with pastors to start helping a training session about who they should call or where they could go to get the help. Um, I don't find that there's many uh, therapists who might refer people to their pastors, but I think that clergy need to be able to refer their constituents to a license or someone who's skilled in that area, because they need to remember that something wrong inside your head is part of your health. It's part of your mental wellness. It's an illness that needs to be cured, that needs to be worked with, and
You
it's
know,
not
Pam,
just
I find sometimes that the church could be a blessing and a church and a curse because of the fact that, someone goes to the church and say that they're going through emotional issues, and the leadership will say, "We're gonna pray about it."
correct.
Uh, we're just gonna about it and they stroke them and then they send them away instead of getting them the help they actually need. And they have to be able to say, this is how far I can take you, but this is a contacts of people that can get you the help that you need. They need to have the wherewithal to say, I can't fully help you, but here's someone who can. And I find sometimes that that's not the case.
Correct.
Well,
You're absolutely right.
one of the things that I have seen walking on both sides of this is this, and I go back to your statement, Pam. I think there has to be a healthy relationship between both the mental health world and the clergy world. Why? Because as human beings, we are triune beings. We are a spirit, our spiritual part. They have a soul, our mind, seat of reflective consciousness, and we live in a body. At the
Correct.
end of the day, any good therapist who's worth their salt must be able to recognize the role that faith or spirituality plays in the life of the individual they're dealing with. Many people are governed by their spiritual belief system. So, as a therapist, I need to understand what role that plays inside of it and not to ever diminish it, but rather seek to understand it. And that's one of the reasons why it might be good that a therapist may be grounded in their faith or have association with the faith community and clergy so that that we can be on the same page. We can understand how that works together. But by the same token, clergy have to understand that everything that a person go through is not a job for just pouring oil and saying, I'm casting the devil out of you. We need to understand some things come forth through process where we have to work through some things. There is safety in a multitude of counsel. And so that means that as a man of faith, and I am, as a spiritual man that I am, I recognize and I validate the fact that people need help with their emotional, mental well-being. The sukkos. Paul speaks of it as the sukitos. He's talking about the natural man. And when he's talking about the mind, he's talking about the word naus, which is the seat of the reflective conscience. So as a clergy, I don't think that everybody in there is super spiritual, but by the same token, I know everybody has a soul, everybody has a mind, because that's what we've been telling them all along. Let's renew that mind. So if I'm going to thoroughly help them, and this is to every clergy, faith leader, if I'm going to thoroughly help them, I need to have an understanding of what they're going through. And that means that I need to have an association or an affiliation with at least knowing the resources that are out there.
Correct.
You know, I'm not a trauma surgeon, and most pastors are not trauma specialists, but we ought to have enough knowledge to at least be a good triage nurse to be able to assess them and point them to the right direction. And when we don't have enough knowledge to be a good triage nurse, then we put ourselves in harm's way, but even greater, we could be putting that parishioner in harm's way. How do we help that family? How do we guide that family?
Correct.
We got to have more than jokes and talk about, oh, you know, Peter's a little, you know, he's a little stuck. You know, his elevator doesn't go all the way up to the top. That creates shame. But when we're talking about, you know, how do we get him help? When did it start? That's an appropriate question.
Right.
When did it start?
Correct.
Why do I bring that up? Because what we know is this, and you know this from our time, we know that mental disorder starts early in adolescent years. Mental disorders often start in adolescence or early childhood. So it sounds like to me when I'm talking to clergy, this is scripture. The question was asked of Jesus and his disciple many times, when did this start? How long has it been this way? Yeah. It is a beginning point that we need to know. So we can't, you know, we just can't Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John our way out of that. We have to understand there's a significance. So there has to be a marriage, if you would. In other words, I've got to be able to trust what I know, but be vulnerable enough to admit what I don't know so that we can do the best job when we're dealing with people. And let me close my little part by saying this. I've done this work inside of domestic violence for years, where I've even had, whether it's victim services or other service providers, will call me and say, look, Dr. Thicklin, will you sit in on a session with us? Will you deal with this, walk with us here with this particular victim or this particular victim? Why? Because they recognize, and most likely from some of the teachings they've heard me do publicly, they recognize the fact this person here They're not going to take or accept any advice that we give them because their faith, their understanding of their faith of spirituality is standing like that. So I have to have someone who can speak that language that may get them to be able to see, understand, look, we're not asking you to violate your faith. We're getting you to understand the fact that this is part of that help and why it is. And we got to be willing to be that way because number one, I discovered two things in life a long time ago. And it doesn't matter how spiritual it is. Number one, I know there is a God. And number two, I know I'm not him. Okay, so that's the amazing.
But not all pastors know how to separate that. I mean, I agree with you. I thoroughly agree with you.
That's the amazing discovery. So we need help.
Yeah.
Yeah, and listening to you, Dr. J, one of the things I know individuals are wondering is mental health hereditary?
Absolutely. There are some things that are hereditary, and we know that. There are some hereditary things that we understand that is passed on. Certain mental disorders are. We've seen people bipolarism, those type things that run in the family. We know from what we call the study of epigenetics that there are some things that are passed on. I mean, there are people who've never met their biological parents and things could be adopted, but those things are passed on through them, through their cells, through their DNA. And so in those cases there,
and they still can get help, even though it is hereditary, but you have to seek help. So that's one of the things I wanted to bring out to individuals. Say, oh, I heard my mama was crazy, so this is why I act the way I do. This is why I treat you like this, because I'm crazy. And then the minute is like, my dad was crazy, so I'm gonna be crazy too. My dad was an alcoholic. My dad was a drug user. So people say, well, because this is it, this is built in my DNA and I can't change, so what's the use?
And so often what happens there is that's where people put a period rather than a comma. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people conclude that this is the end. This is the end. This is just the way it is. And it doesn't have to be that way. Sometimes your foreparents and those individuals did not get the help that may be now available to you.
Right. There's so much more help now. So much
more help.
It's just like with domestic violence. Back in the day, there was no one, if you beat your wife, the guys high-fived you. That's when you keep her in check. Now, that's not the case.
Absolutely. So we have to take advantage of what's out there with us now. Walk with us through certain things. We've all seen situations, I know I have, where people I went to school with, classmates that were live and vibrant, and they were, they had great personalities. And then years pass and you come back across them, you say, wonder what happened to him or what happened to her, because they no longer have that light. They no longer have that energy, and only to discover that they've had something traumatic to happen in their lives, something that happened that shook their world, and oftentimes did not get the help, or what we call, untreated trauma.
Untreated trauma.
And so it didn't get treated. And for us as people of color, that's where the confusion comes, because we have this whole thing about, we hard, we go hard, black don't crack.
I haven't heard that in years.
Yeah, so we're resistant. We've always had to go on. We always have had to go on because the fact we did not always have doors open to us to overcome and to do things. The thing about it that we have to get help. Understand that I have been impacted. Let me get help. Counseling does a number of things, going through things. It's amazing that we'll believe this in certain things. We'll believe this. We believe in AA. We believe in NA when it comes to people who have been addicted to drugs and substance abuse, and we see them come out of it. We see some of the best sponsors are former people who was once totally addicted, but through their process, their help, the counseling, I call it the redisciplinary, the rewiring of who they are, they come out and they become whole individuals. And that same thing can happen to us if we're willing to open up to be receptive to the information. Don't stigmatize. Stop the stigmatize. Stop the dogma. Stop perpetuating those things there, and recognize, yeah, we need help.
Need
And if
help.
we
We do
need
need
help,
help, and I hope that the speaker who's going to be presenting that piece on trauma and particularly domestic violence is not always in the home between the husband and wife. We have young people who are experiencing that same thing, a young teenage girl with her boyfriend or whomever who was in some
And
kind
not just
of
high school, middle school.
yes,
correct. So we need to be able to identify when that's kind of issues are going on and how to separate those children and get them the help that they need because they don't recognize it because they're getting some kind of false sense of being probably with gifts or with whatever. I mean, I ran it when I lived in New York. I had an auto parts store in Brooklyn, and I used to always remember my best clients were those guys who I know that were drug dealers and stuff, but they come in with cash money and buy all kinds of things for their vehicles, and then they have these girls walk in with these coats that they're dragging on the floor, the same coats that they were dragging, I had on layaway for about 4 months to get it,
wow,
because I wanted one also. But you understand, but they were just being taken care of. But they, and young, pretty attractive queens or queens they could have been queens to be, but they just didn't know how to get away or out of that situation.
Right.
They were embedded or burdened. So that's going to be a part of the conversation that we're going to have or presentation. But again, I want you to know that, and people to know that anything that the presenters are doing, they all have their own businesses maybe or something where they can help them on a more personal scale. But we want you to get an overview of issues that confront people in our community. Okay.
yeah, Pam, that's one thing I like about this festival, and I have liked about it, is that it's presented in a way where people can understand that Lottie, Dottie, and anybody can be and is affected by mental illnesses and the different things in life that impacts us. We all live in this world. We don't live in a bubble. Things happen around us. I mean, we talk about dysfunctionality all the time, right?
Right.
Dysfunctional family,
Right.
dysfunctional neighborhoods, dysfunctional businesses. So dysfunction is around us, but part of that mental health and that mental wellness is the fact of how do we navigate, and we do have to learn to navigate. Uh, you know, I have seen young people that grew up in some of the most egregious conditions, and I've seen them with one quest, and that was to get out. If they ever got out, what they could do. And I've seen many of them become successful because they did get out, but mainly because they had a vision of what it might look like when I get out.
Right.
I want to change the world. I don't want this to be my future. I don't want this to be it. So they got out. They begin to recognize what it was to be living healthy. They begin to recognize what it was to have, a healthy mindset and a healthy time frame. And for that reason there, they help break the stigmas and break the cycles. And that's really what it's all about at the end of the day. How do we do that? How do we learn how to be better parents? How do we learn not to be the parents that's so abusive that we've caused, so we contributed to traumas in the lives of our kids? So those things are important because everyone that perpetrates is not necessarily a ruthless individual. Sometimes they're simply an unequipped individual that is continuing to perpetuate what they've experienced themselves.
Correct. Correct. This
So
this is
once again, May 21st.
May 21st, a Saturday, May 21st at the Salvation Army, 600 Rosemary Avenue from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we will start at 10 a.m. sharp and we will end at 2 p.m. We won't be there all day, but I guarantee you we will have a fun day. And we will have like the community resource tables. We will have giveaways. We will have topics as I indicated on the trafficking and the bullying. And by the way, we have raffle session that usually goes on pretty well, where everyone who comes into that show gets a small a sheet, and they have to have it signed off on by people at every table in there. And at the end of the session, they get a prize if they get their, if their ticket is pulled from a hat. But those raffle prizes are actually provided by the nonprofit organizations that are seated around, in that exhibit hall. Because we do not charge a fee, if you're a nonprofit and providing a service, we do require that you bring at least one gift to give away during the raffle. And people make off pretty nice. Sometimes they give really nice, little gifts and stuff. It gets to be fun. So yes, that's what they do. So again, we're working against each other. So if we can get you in there and get you sit in and talk to folks, then we want you to. And then on Sunday morning, remember I mentioned that I'm asking, because I know that we'll have a lot of clergy. We've done a special mailing to all of the clergy, or not all of the clergy. I know in the historic Northwest and a couple of other surrounding
Yes.
areas to come to this event. And the whole piece, the clergy that has not the clergy, but the faith institution that has the majority of congregants at the event will win a small donation. I don't know how much that'll be. Sometimes my mama would give me a gift.
For something for the offering plate.
It'll be a picture, and she'll say, "Okay, well, just think about what it'll be in an event." But no, we do expect that. So from the registration to when you leave and give an evaluation is what I'm really looking at. So this is what it's going to be: our Family Mental Health and Wellness Festival.
And the website?
Our website is www.westpalmbeachmentalhealth.com.
So they can go there even after the event and find out information about what you're doing and how they can support and continue with you on your journey.
Most certainly. And we will be having podcasts and other things that are coming that'll be placed on that that'll be on that website. There's a couple of links to resources. If you just want to go and read up on different things, you can do that as well on that website.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We really appreciated you coming on and sharing.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me with me talking like this.
Yes. Yes. And, we'll send you out this YouTube so that you can share it amongst your friends so that they can get the word out about what this is, and not know that this is just an isolated event, that you do it each and every year.
Well, and also after this event, we're talking about doing a walk for mental health, probably around January.
Okay.
A walk for mental health. And hopefully we'll be able to, maybe in the spring of next year, come up with a conference, a little mental health conference that we can have right here in West Palm Beach.
I am looking forward to the day where we have informative events like this on mental health and domestic violence, where people will willingly just come so they can get the information, especially since it's free. I look forward to the day where they don't have to be pulled and dragged and enticed to come, where they'll be like, I need this help. I want to get better. I want to excel. Help me get there.
Correct.
A lot of times people don't want to participate in their own rescue, and that's why we have to pull, tag, and drag. So I'm looking forward to that day where we have people that will willfully come and say, help me.
Correct. Okay.
Well, that's been the beautiful thing about it. And Pam, one of the things that makes this such a special event, even as people heard tonight, that we heard a conversational format in talking about something that is so important. So the festival brings about a diversity approach, one that is both conversational, one that is very much informational, and then one, quite frankly, that allows one to experience it, because with the music being there, and you talked about the different ones, music is therapeutic.
Yes, it is. Very therapeutic.
Yeah. Music is therapeutic for us on many different levels. I do know
I
of
always check out when it's old school music. It just takes me away. Whatever's going on, I just put me on some Smokey Robinson, Earth, Wind, and Fire,
yeah,
and I'm good
you
there.
just cruise, right?
Marvin Gaye.
One thing that I neglected to say, and I'd like to say it before I forget, Gervonta, State Representative
Right.
Gervonta Edmonds, Ty has been with us since 2017. He's always been our master of ceremony, so to speak. He works with the group. He's now a state rep and with all these new responsibilities. And I said to him, I said, "We love to have you again." He said, "No, no, no, Ms. Frazier, I'm going to be there. I like being at that thing. I enjoy that." So he again is going to be our master of ceremonies for this event, and
Awesome.
that's our state representative.
Awesome.
Okay.
I love our people that serve in the community. Even when
Yes.
we help them get there and excel, they still look back and say, "What can I do for you?"
Correct.
So
And that's
that's why Hot Topics from the Soul always supports, candidates, because we believe that they can take and cause a shift in our communities for the better. So we're
Absolutely.
all in for that. Dr. J, we're out of time, and I would like you to close us out for tonight. Thank
Absolutely.
you, Pamela Frazier, for joining us, and we appreciate you for taking the time. I know you're busy trying to get things together. We do events, so we know it's a lot.
busy work. But again, thank you so much for having me, and I hope you can make it to the event yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's been a great night. I think this is vital information. I think that as we continue to do our part in raising awareness in this month of May, mental health awareness, and then not only that, self-help, self-efficiency, so many different ways to find help. We're finding individuals doing it. We're finding groups doing it. There are women groups that are coming forth with how do we empower women? How do you recover from your trauma? How do you recover from your hurt? How do you not spew on everybody your last experience and your bitterness? So there are groups such as My Sister's Keepers and different groups that are doing things that are making a difference. And that's what this has been about. Dr. Val, you said it, even as we came into the pandemic, that life would look different after the pandemic because people will find ways to either reinvent themselves or finding, if you would, a different help-seeking measures to become a better version of themselves. And that's what this is about. And, this is what this month is really about. How do we become better? A better version of ourselves. How do we find ways to help one another and be whole inside of what we're doing?
Well, thank you, Dr. J. And I want to invite you all to tune in and join us on next Tuesday for another Hot Topics from the Soul. And also
Absolutely.
visit Dr. J's website, www.jrthicklin.com, and my website, www.fromthesoulofAwoman.com. And please remember to subscribe to Hot Topics from the Soul. That's Hot Topics from the Soul on YouTube. Good night and God bless. Thank you
Good
for
night.
being with
God
us
bless.
tonight.